Okay, we are now recording, and today is February 9th, year three of the plague, uh, and it is 3:16 p.m. We are New York to Chicago, and I am with Veronica Roth for the second time. And each time, this is great because I get to do an interview with you whenever your adult novels come out.
Yeah.
So the last one was Chosen Ones, which was that was a John Joseph Adams book, was it not?
It was. I did have one come out in October called Poster Girl, also with John.
I didn't know that, and I will blame John for that because I work for John. Uh,
It's okay.
I, do, I do the post production on his podcasts
Right.
of what he.
Awesome.
Uh, uh, so I'm doing 6 podcasts a month for him, and so he should tell me these things. So,
That's all right.
yeah, it is. So, but Chosen Ones, which I love, and I keep referring to people and telling people about, especially since that latest version of Dune had begun, uh, which was pretty good. But Dune, I think, is the ultimate Chosen One
Oh,
novel.
for me, certainly. Yeah.
Yeah, and me. But we are now going from the far distant future in a way, and we're bringing the far distant past into a different future. You have embarked on summoning Sophocles into the 21st century
Yes. Quite
with
an
a book.
undertaking.
Yeah, I would say so. With a book called Arch-Conspirator, Arc or Arch? Arc.
I say Arch, but I
You
don't know.
say Arch? I think
Yeah.
both are correct, but we'll go with Arch for today, like Marble Arch or something like that.
Hmm.
And it is basically a retelling, updating, and a version of Antigone that is a little bit more suitable for a modern audience. Is
That's
that
right.
is that yeah? I mean, I'm not reading copy.
No, I know. But I'm just thinking about how when I reread it, in order to do this retelling, I was like, this really holds up pretty well in a modern context. But anyway,
Yeah,
that's part of we could talk about that later.
yeah, absolutely. But I just thought we would chat for a bit. You're going to read for us?
Yes, yeah, I'm ready to.
Great. Well, why don't we go with that?
Okay.
And I'm going to put you on full screen, and I'll be back when you're done.
Okay. So I'm going to read from, sorry, there is a siren passing me right now. So I'll just wait a sec. Or maybe I won't.
You're in Chicago. I'm in New York. The
It's,
likelihood of there not being a siren is slim.
I know we're doomed, and I live down the street from a firehouse. So it doesn't help. But yeah, okay. It seems to be gone. Okay, so I'm going to read from the second chapter, and it's from the point of view of Antigone's brother Polynices. And I feel like this play was written in 441 BC, so it's not a spoiler to say that Polynices dies. So this is the only chapter that he has in the book, but it's a different voice than the rest of it. Anyway, that's yeah. Okay. Been coming here to the Cafe Athena for several years now, ever since I had spent to burn and she started working here. It was her dad's shop. Had to be, or she wouldn't have been working. But mostly he wasn't there to catch me staring. I figured every woman, from the first one who ever gave me that funny feeling to the one I ultimately got assigned to, would be doing the same equation. Add my famous parents' tragic backstory, generational wealth, and winsome smile, and subtract the unsettling reality of my busted genetic code. And what do you get? Someone worth messing around with? Well, if the waitress at the Athena even bothered with the calculus, she came up decidedly not interested, But the coffee tasted less burnt here than in most other places, so I kept coming anyhow. This isn't coffee, Parth said to me after his first sip. It's liquid shit. True, it wasn't coffee. There were just a handful of coffee plants in the greenhouses, so only a lucky few had ever had the real stuff. This was just an approximation of coffee, with a conjecture of sugar stirred into it. I was sitting at the least rickety of the tables out front, street side, my toe wedged under one of the table legs to steady it. The seat across from me was empty, but Parth was standing, drinking from a tiny mug that made his hand look comically large. Somebody pedaled past with a bucket of paper flowers hanging off the back of her bicycle. One of them toppled onto the stones, nabbed right away by a beggar kid with a cup for coin. He stuck it behind his ear. You could sit, I said to Parth. Tig probably won't be on time. These chairs make me feel like I'm playing tea time with my niece, he said. Big guy, Parth was. Had the look of a guy who would turn out to be a softie, only he wasn't. Too tricky for that. Plus, I'm done. You let her come all the way here by herself? Some brother. Tig can handle herself. Parth set his mini mug down on the table and eyed me. You're not going to tell her nothing, right? Of course not. But you know her, she might figure it out anyway. Just so long as she doesn't interfere. Interfere with what? A slim, reedy voice asked from behind him. And there she was, my sister, sidling up just as the clock struck 1400 hours. Antigone, Parth said to her, with a head bob that was supposed to be like a bow. Parthenopeus, she replied. Will you be joining us? No, gotta run, he said. See you later, Paul. He dodged the beggar kid and his cup, crossed the street, and disappeared into a crooked alley. A gust of wind came up behind him, blowing dust into the air. Antigone pulled the scarf she wore over her hair across her nose and mouth until it settled. I just held my breath. The waitress came by, that little bounce in her walk, and brought 2 cups of coffee, black, and a pile of sweetener cubes stacked neat like a temple. She didn't look either of us in the eye. Didn't ask if we'd like anything else. I thought you liked the service here, Antigone said. I like the look of it. She snorted. You don't care who treats you like a pariah as long as she's got nice legs? You can't fault people for learning what they're taught. Can too. I do it all the time, she said. So, what was Parth on about? I should have known she wouldn't let that go. Something's brewing, I said. You know that. Something's been brewing, she said. You could just tell me what's going on. No need, I said. No help necessary, and it would just put you in a bad spot. She frowned at me. Back when we were kids, we went in and out of looking like our parents. Dad said kids were like that, mushy, sculptures still drying in the sun. Now, though, Tig was settled, hardened, and she looked just like Mom. Bend at the bridge of her nose, weak chin, big round eyes. I'm already in a bad spot, she said, sharp as noon sun. I live in the house of my patricide, and I'm betrothed to his son. Yeah, but there's a difference between a bad spot I put you in and a bad spot I didn't, I said. Plus, the others would kill me. No potential mothers allowed at this level of the operation. You know that. Yes. Sour as, and this is nothing like our mom, who could rip you to shreds with a gentle word if she chose. No subtle streak in Antigone. She's more like Dad in that way. Can't risk me. I'm just a viable womb on stilts. That is the general attitude. Fuck Paul, she said, leaning over the table, her scarf almost falling into her coffee. I'm so tired of that. We both looked across at the little shop with its wares spilling out into the street. Stacks of old cookware, tangles of wires, piles of light bulbs still in their boxes, a rack of sunglasses with mostly intact lenses. It's not me, though. I reached across the table and covered her hand where it clasped the mug. You know that, right? I know everything would be better if you were involved. It's just that we're trying to unite 7 districts, and some of them are more traditional than others. We're only as strong as our weakest links. Her hand trembled a little. I know it's not you, she said. Sometimes I just stare into the future and don't like anything I see. I knew her future as well as she knew mine. We would go where Creon said, do what Creon decreed. We lived by Creon's mercy and we died by Creon's might. Marrying Haman won't be so bad, I said. What do you know? she said. You'll never fear your wife, but every wife fears her husband, even if she doesn't say so. She stuck her thumbnail between her teeth and bit down. A moment later, she added, I don't give a shit about Haman anyway. That's not what I mean. Well, if everything goes right tonight. She laughed at me. I said, You don't have faith in me? It's not you I don't have faith in, she said. It's things going right. Well, I need you to find some. I reached into the bag hanging off the back of the chair and took something out. It was a metal instrument about the size of my hand, pointed at one end, thick at the other, almost like a syringe. An extractor. I put it on the table between us. She recoiled from it like it was a snake. Just in case, I said. Get that thing away from me. You're not dying. Just in case. She leaned over the table, her wide eyes fixed on mine. Do you have any idea what it would do to me if I lost you? She said in a harsh whisper. Yeah, I kinda do, I said. Same as what it would do to me if I lost you. And lately, that seems more and more likely. What's that supposed to mean? The thing about her was, nobody could hide from her, but she thought she could hide from everybody. Like she was some great actress. Like I wouldn't notice my own sister going limp by fractions, all the fight gone out of her. Sometimes you stare into the future, I said, and you don't like anything you see. Don't you dare tell me you're doing this for me. Not just you. God, how long do you think we can go on this way? Any of us. A city of 7 districts. Kids chanted about it in the north. 7 houses crumbling on a Theban street. One's got no fire, one's got no heat, one's got no water, one's got no meat. Saw them once, jumping rope to it. Got scattered a few minutes later by the police. Antigone touched the extractor with just her fingertips. What if I don't believe in this shit? She said, nodding to the instrument. What if I don't think a person can be reborn? You don't? I don't know. Well, doesn't really matter either way, does it? I said. I believe in it. And if I die, I want you to promise to store my ichor in the archive. I want you to make sure I can be remade. Consider this my will and testament. Okay? Okay, she whispered. Promise? My word is my word, she said, scowling at me. But yes, I promise. If you promise not to plan on dying. I smiled. Promise. She closed her eyes as another wave of wind swept across us, dusting our coffees. Tears spilled down her cheeks and she wiped them away with her scarf. By the time the air settled again, she looked unaffected. She sipped her coffee, dust and all. This coffee is shit, she said. Everybody's a critic, I replied, and I chugged the rest of mine. Uh-oh.
For safety's sake, I turned off my audio. So, because sometimes it gets in there. And those of you who are not just listening on the radio, not that there's any just about it, but those of you who are looking at this on YouTube can see it's a really, really neat book cover.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I know that I should know the name of that kind of art, the art movement that's.
I am, of course, blanking on. It's Pablo Hurtado de Mendoza who did that.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually a classical piece of art.
Well, he was commissioned for the cover. Yeah.
Oh, he was.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's great because somehow I watch occasional things about art on YouTube or things like that, and it fascinates me. And that is such a beautiful, surreal, not Dada, but surreal view. A little bit of Dali-esque, like Salvador Dali.
Yeah, it's very cool.
And yeah, it is. And it gives you the idea of what kinds of things we would be talking about when we speak of the archive. So this being a retelling, now is it a total? It's not a totally faithful retelling of the Sophocles, I take it. I haven't read it in years, but usually nobody ends happy.
Uh, yeah. um, I always preface this by calling it a Greek tragedy. Like, remember, they don't end well, and this one
Okay.
doesn't either.
Yeah.
It is faithful in that it follows the same outline as the play, basically. But when you transport something into the distant future and you add all these other elements to it, of course, it doesn't feel that familiar. But some of the conversations, I tried to hit the same beats in the same order because I just think they're so brilliant in the original. Um, yeah.
And the fates of the characters are pretty much the same.
Um,
Fates with a lower case F in this case. When you're talking of
yes,
tragedy, you have to be careful about that.
it's true. No, they are the same. I think the only one that changes is Mamie, the sister, Antigone's sister.
Mm, okay, and we won't go beyond that because, well,
Yeah, no
so
spoilers.
so many years ago, that's a spoiler, no question. Um, it seems like a lot of uh, uh, science fiction, fantasy genre authors have, in the last few years, been rediscovering the Greek stories and using them for inspiration. I know C.S.E. Cooney had been doing a number of short stories and now a novel that's set in various Greek settings, although she's very happy to, like, I shouldn't say, Medea says, oh, never mind, I love the kids, or something like that.
Oh gosh, yeah.
No, she doesn't do that, but she does pick up her inspiration and build songs. And what caused you, if anything, to specifically look at Sophocles for
Well,
inspiration?
I was really against ever doing a retelling. So I like reading them, but I don't like to have to tell someone else's story that's not has never been interesting to me. And I think sometimes when you set that kind of boundary for yourself, then part of your mind is like immediately like, okay, well, what would the exception be, and how would you do it though, if you did?
Hmm.
So I was talking to a friend, like, ugh, retellings, like I'm not doing that. And then a couple minutes later, I said to her, this was over text, I said, okay, but if I did one, it would be Antigone. And she said, okay, well, you have to do that. Like that's a great idea. So I think it was just her encouragement that made me think about it, and then suddenly it started to come together. Um, that play has always been a favorite of mine. It really has stuck with me since high school when I first read it.
Hmm.
Um, and the character is especially like resonant. So I think that's really why I chose Antigone.
Yeah, and she's a good character for today, a good and sort of role figure or something. When I started at WBAI in the late '60s, believe it or not, we had a late night show, feminist show called Electra Rewired,
Oh.
which always thought was just a brilliant title.
Yeah, that's so good. I love
Yeah,
it.
and reading Arch-Conspirators, conspirator singular. I'll get it right one of these days.
It's all right.
Well, yeah, but the listeners, when they're looking it up, they don't want to overtype. You might pass it by as you're looking for the book online. Oh, I should tell people, by the way, if they want to get, now the publication date is, we're recording on the 9th, and it's coming out on the 21st.
Yep. Soon.
And I'm broadcasting this hopefully on the Monday of that week.
Oh, great.
But that's
Perfect.
that's that's the intent. Of course, somebody could be listening to. We have our own archives. It would be in our archive, and So they could be listening to this 2 years from now. They can, in fact, go and find the interview we did for Chosen One and the reading you did for that. That was so wonderful. And then later on, my own fault got me into trouble. I'm gonna have
I still feel partially responsible.
nah. If I had thought about it, if I had realized, I would have warned you in advance of the Carlin 7 words and all that. One of which we encountered in this.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Number 2 of the
Ah,
Carlin 7. I will edit it appropriately without people will know what the word is
I'm sure.
without hearing it. Just reverse it. It's very simple. And I digressed myself out of there, but so let's go to another obvious question. Are you thinking of using other classics soon as models? Are you going to explore some of the other great writings?
That's a good question. I don't think so, unless it kind of comes together the way this one did. It wasn't like, oh, I do retellings now. It was like, I have to do this one. So I'm gonna see where it goes. I did reread Oedipus earlier this year because I remember really liking that one as well. They're of course related. Oedipus is Antigone's father. So
Mhm.
and I feel like we're all so familiar with that play because, he kills his father and marries his mother, and it's just like a horrifying revelation of what he's done. But there's so much else going on there.
Yeah,
So I think there's something there, but we'll see. These things take time.
yeah. Uh, this is a terrible thing to ask a writer. So just say, I'd rather not answer that. But can you? What's are you working on something right now? And what
Um,
might that be?
I am. So I wrote this one is a novella, and I wrote another novella. I'm editing it now. So that one is more fantasy than anything I've written so far.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
that's all I can say.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's fine. That's
Mhm.
fine. How do you feel, given this is not about Arch-Conspirator, but we have now moved past your initial YA phase, and that went through um, what was it? 2 movies and 3. So, because I thought they split one movie into 2 parts.
No, they planned on that, but then the
That's
third movie did not do well. So they were like, never mind.
which is so ridiculous. Which
I
is
mean,
so
I told them, I was like, this is the one that has the least plot. Why do you want to split it in half? It was just what everyone was doing at that time. So
yeah,
a very particular moment in time.
yeah, yeah, and not long from now they'll probably be doing whole things. It's the way Russian cinema does, where a 3-hour movie by Tarkovsky is a short subject.
Goodness gracious. Stalker needs to be watched in like 6 parts.
Uh, I love Stalker. I love 3 of my favorite science fiction films are Tarkovsky's Stalker, and
Solaris.
so well, of course, Solaris. I even liked, to an extent, the Soderbergh, the Steven
Oh
Soderbergh.
yeah, with George Clooney, right?
with- Yes,
Yeah,
and
you know what? It's not that bad.
it
Like
really is.
I was expecting worse.
Yeah. Well, Lem hated them both.
No, I'm sure.
Whatever, and The Sacrifice.
Okay, I
Another.
haven't seen that.
Oh yeah, that's Tarkovsky's last film. There are a few people would say his best, but he made 7 films. You can get 7 people lined up, and each one will say, "No, this is his best," and just let him loose. Might make
Mhm.
might make for fun radio. Nobody would know what we're talking about, but If you had your how cinematic do you think Arch-Conspirator is? I could see it when I was reading it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say. It's not so like every conflict is sort of external in a way, like at least discussed. So I think that tends to help things be more cinematic, like when the characters are actually talking about what they're going through,
Yeah.
as opposed to everything being so internal. So because Antigone is such a kind of bold character, especially in her speech,
Yeah.
um, I think she is sort of, it's easy to picture what's going on. At least
Mhm.
I hope.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think that there are a lot of things that used to be unfilmable that are filmable now. And but this one is, I think, an obvious one, as long as it's got a great director, great art, and
Sure, as long as we get all the pieces in place just where they need to be.
yeah, but they can, it can be done. That's my
It's true.
point. Is
It
that
can.
there are things that you look at and you say, oh, no, that can't be filmed, that can't be made. And since uh, in the last 30 years, there are a lot of unfilmable movies that were very filmable. Um,
Mhm. Yeah,
and so, yeah, you can also put them on stage, which is a
yeah.
favorite of mine. Yes, it would
Mm.
work. If we still have the proper studios, I'd say, hey, what about audio drama? But
Yeah,
and that can be considered. Yeah, audiobooks are still, you know, going big time.
and fictional podcasts are a thing.
Well,
They're like an
yes.
audio drama, right?
Well,
A little bit.
many of them are done by single narrators, but
Oh, right.
some of those, the three that I work on, which are Lightspeed, which I also host, and Nightmare Magazine and Fantasy Magazine, all of which are part of the John Joseph Adams empire, and I do the post production. So we put out 6 stories a month on podcast. And fortunately, not one this week, but next week, one that's 11,000 words. I'm looking forward to editing that. But our readers are so great, great. Grammy Awards, the whole 9 yards. So, but they've also done full radio drama.
Mm.
Skyboat Media are the people that I work with. They create the audio, and then I mess it up. And they've done stuff with Harlan Ellison and even Scott Card.
Hmm.
So uh, so I could certainly imagine this. I mean, Greek tragedies. You can stand the blood a lot better when uh, uh, when it's in your mind's eye, or maybe even worse. It's harder. I'm just
Yeah.
thinking of Dia, and one can also compare. There's some pretty bizarre stuff that's sort of Greek tragedy like in Neil Gaiman,
Mm.
where he just had The Sandman on
Oh, right.
Netflix. And there is one episode, and thank God only one, because I'm squeamish, in which there's some really nasty stuff. So, and there's both a radio version and there's the Netflix version.
Hmm.
I don't know which is worse. Because when it's in your mind's eye,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's worse.
yeah, it really can be. It's quite something. What what media have you thought of working in any media other than the written word?
I mean, I've thought about it, I guess, but I keep coming back to, I mean, I just write stories. Like I just like if you know, people ask like, "Oh, you ever write screenplays?" Like, be an interesting experiment, but um I don't know, I think I would miss this. I like the immersiveness of books and short stories,
Hmm.
and that they require time, I think is important.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. A short story can take as long as a hastily written novel.
yes, and also the time of reading, just like having to sit and absorb um, in probably relative quiet is an important exercise for people now more than ever. So I like to contribute to that. Even, you know, I don't. I watch TV and movies and all that stuff. So I'm not like scornful of that stuff. But I just there should be a place for books.
Yeah, no, oh, absolutely, and for that matter, audiobooks
Oh,
and
oh, I
audio
love audiobooks.
yeah, audio podcasts.
Hmm.
And if you like audiobooks, then you should definitely be checking out Skyboat Media, the people I work with for the John Joseph Adams thing.
Empire.
Well, yeah, his it is a little empire he's got there. It keeps him busy, and
Hmm.
and he turns out great stuff. So, um, but the I think it would be fascinating to hear an adaptation of your adult work.
Well, we'll see.
I mean, there were audiobooks of the Divergent books, right?
Yeah, and there were I think I've always had audiobooks, so
Yeah.
I've gotten
Okay.
lucky. Yeah. Chosen Ones had a full cast, which was great. I read one of the documents.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
read like a page 'cause I'm not really a narrator, but
Who put that out? Who were the audio people on that?
that was Audible.
It
Mm,
was Audible. Okay.
yeah.
Well, they're the distributor, not necessarily.
No,
They also
they made it. Yeah.
they also produced it. Okay. Yeah.
Mhm.
Uh, I just think it would be a real interesting thing to listen to some of your shorter adult work, or see it on stage, as I was saying. And I think that would be very interesting for Arch-Conspirator. Now that you could adapt, right?
I
And
suppose.
and given its roots from Sophocles, this is coming from a play,
Yeah, it's true.
so it would be also appropriate. Did you study classics?
No, I didn't. I did read a lot of older, in literature and stuff. I took a class called Revenge Tragedies.
Mm.
So it's very specific. There are a lot of classic works in that. I took
Oh
a couple
yes,
classics courses, but no, I didn't study classics.
yeah, okay, but ooh, now what was these revenge?
Revenge tragedy. So, like
Revenge.
Titus Andronicus, we read Medea, we read oh, what's that? The the one crap, I can't remember the names of
Yeah,
them, but oh, The
everybody.
Crow too. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
then there's that Hamlet thing. Yeah, right. But we'll see if anybody likes that.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure. Well, jury's still out on that one.
exactly, exactly. I think there have been more productions of that just in the last few years than could fill a jury box of
Yeah.
just people playing Hamlet, men
Mhm.
and women, all different types. Uh, what do you like to read the best?
I mean, I read pretty much exclusively science fiction and fantasy, but
Mhm.
I don't know what else you mean.
Yeah, and I would say that was true for me a little while ago, but I've discovered a few history writers,
Mm.
um, like Jill Lepore is an absolute favorite of mine. She lectures at Harvard and writes for the New Yorker, so she does, and the New York Times. She does okay, and uh,
When I branch out to mystery.
ah,
So,
and
and like adult literary fiction, like, but sometimes that veers into sci-fi territory anyway. Like George Saunders is always kind of playing with reality. So,
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I did an interview uh, a month ago. He now names and book titles are all flying out of my head. But it's still right there. Mr. Breakfast by Jonathan Carroll,
Hmm.
who is very literary, but he's also almost always science fiction. And he's got like 35 books or so out there, and all in print.
Nice. Wow.
And some of them brilliant, some of them absolutely brilliant. But you don't know if they're genre or not until you get to a certain point.
Hmm.
And we should explain to listeners that when we say genre, we mean any of the science fictional, fantasy, horror, speculative fiction. There's a new term every 15 years or so, and it's all the same genre.
Yeah.
So, uh, can you imagine yourself writing a mystery?
Well, I think I just did Poster Girl that came out in October was a mystery.
Oh,
Um,
I'm
it
sorry.
was
That
no,
one
no, it's
totally
okay.
passed me by.
Yeah, it was dystopian, so it still had like enough of the science fiction elements to keep me engaged,
Hmm.
but tackling a mystery was it was difficult. I mean, I think the hardest thing about it is feeling like you need a heavier authorial hand because you're controlling the reading experience more than usual. Like I have to know what the reader knows or suspects at every moment. Like
Yeah,
who do they think it is now or what clues are they picking up on? And I found that to be really difficult. I just was like, I don't know what they know. Like are they going to suspect? Like I have no idea. Um so that was it was very interesting. I would write more of them, I think.
yeah. It would be a lot of work, but they are fun, and they're making a comeback, partly thanks to Ryan Johnson with his.
Oh yeah,
Have you watched his TV series?
not yet.
Oh,
I want to.
it.
Good?
Oh, I love it. The new episode every Thursday. So tonight, I know what I'm watching. Poker Face. It stars Natasha Lyonne, who's also a co-producer with Ryan Johnson, and it's uh, it's daunting, the idea of how could people come to write this, where you have to think of every alternate thought in every person and follow everything that's going on, which is especially true of his two uh, Benoit Blanc movies. I know he doesn't like to call them all Knives Out movies. The first one
Right.
was Knives Out, then Glass Onion, and he's already working on the third. And each one in a different setting, each one with a slightly different influence.
Right.
So it's fun because science fiction and fantasy, that's like you take all the worlds, I think, and you take the parts that you want to see. But in a mystery, it's all a trapped room,
Right.
no matter where you go with that. And but I'm doing all the talking here. It really should be you. Yeah. Ah, we have a viewer on YouTube.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. Hello.
Yes, yes, and a fine writer himself of YA fiction. As a matter of fact, E.C. Myers. Um,
Welcome.
and he's saying Hour of the Wolf starts earlier and earlier these days. Ha ha ha. No, this is just a recording, Eugene, but we thought this would be a good way to do it. We have to do one with you whenever your next book comes out, but we'll talk about that some other time. Um, my problem in interviewing you is that there's so many places to go, and you've reached uh, such heights. And how does it feel now to be moving from YA to now you've got 3 books for adults. And I think you had some earlier,
Mm-mm.
right? Or just short stories?
Um, yeah, there was one short story, probably
Oh,
two.
okay.
Yeah. Um, it feels good. I don't know. It feels even more natural now. Um, I guess I I don't really, make big distinctions in my approach, but of course the considerations of YA are a little different. Um, and there's just new ones, so it's just a bit of an adjustment. But I feel like I don't know. I feel like I'm tackling, the kind of thematic concerns that are most interesting to me now. So it's not like I you don't really grow out of writing way. There's plenty of, very grown up wise people who write for young readers. But you do have to kind of understand how to speak to them and what's interesting to them. And if you find yourself losing touch with that, then you shouldn't be writing YA. So
Mhm.
at least for now, I am exploring different avenues.
Okay, that's great because, otherwise it would just be going for the commercial thing.
Right. Although I don't know. I mean, I feel like YA had its big boom and now it's just like going to a normal, like it's settled into itself a little bit more. So when
Yeah,
I first started writing it, it was just, you know, it was the Wild West. It was,
yeah, I was gonna ask you about that because Divergent, I guess it's your first big YA book,
yep.
came out how many years ago?
Mm,
Or is that fiction?
13,
Wow.
12? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
I
and
know.
yeah, and that's just, partway into the Wild Westishness of it all.
Yes.
And now it's a permanent genre, I feel. I think people will, still be using the term YA in 50 years.
Yeah.
And we'll see, and it's a genre that I think will go in have subgenres and go into different places. But when you write something like Arch-Conspirator, that it's just like Sophocles, really?
Yeah.
As a which is close to genre, just the idea of the archive. Certainly, you get your gods coming in every so often to wreak havoc, and demigods.
Yeah. Although I don't know if I don't think there's divine intervention in any of this trio of plays, which is Oedipus, Rex, Oedipus at Colonus, and Antigone, of course. But I could be remembering wrong. But they
Yeah.
do get weird. Like, what's the one that comes after Electra? Crap, I can't
Oh,
remember. Um. Anyway, that one is like a tribunal with god, like demigods or something.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
Heracles and other people just show up all of a sudden and
right.
do stuff. Circe is certainly around in various places. She's a sorceress, if nothing else. So, uh, uh, and talking about how Greek stories are becoming influences again, even Marvel with their Eternals series has been pulling from the Greek pantheon
Yeah. Well,
primarily.
there's such high drama, like that's one of the challenges of this actually is that so many bad things happen all in a row at the end of this play. And it's true of like Oedipus is a great example. Like he finds out that he murdered his father and married his mother, and then he pokes out his own eyes. Like it is intense, that's and it works kind of in the context of the play. It's so old sounding to us that I think we just forget how extreme that is. But Antigone's the same. A bunch of people die all in a row.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So
And
I was like,
and
how am I going to do it?
yeah,
All right.
and the same thing happens uh, in that one episode of The Sandman where
Um,
there's this yeah in the TV series episode 5 in the original graphic novel, I think number 6, but I never read the graphic novel.
oh,
Sorry, Neil. Uh, although the TV series was so good, so brilliant, that it has led me to start watching it. And there is an episode where pretty much everybody dies and somebody puts pencils in his eyes.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
Love it.
that I had trouble. Uh,
Eye stuff is always hard for me, which I think is why I always do it. I think I've done that in like 3 out of my books. Anyway, we don't need to talk about my eye gore.
yeah, I know, but on the other hand, it's an interesting thing that people choose that for dramatic impact, specifically the eyes. Being and they're probably tying into their being windows to the soul.
And they're vulnerable.
Oh,
Yeah.
aren't they ever? So, do you think you might return to the pantheon, or not pantheon, because we're not necessarily doing gods here, but to the Greek works or similar um, mythological folklore, something Hindi, maybe the way that Roger Zelazny did?
Well, I've been interested in Slavic mythology recently.
Ooh,
So we'll see about that. I'm Polish, so or my mother is well, she was born in Belgium, but she spoke Polish and it's the whole thing. Anyway, so I'm kind of interested in connecting to that part of my roots more lately. So I'm sure usually when I get into something suddenly it appears in a book later, like in a couple of years.
right.
So we'll see. We'll see what happens with that one.
Yeah, I just gotten uh, this impression in the back of my head of you tackling Baba Yaga.
Oh, well, interesting that you should say that. I won't say
It-
I'm not gonna say anything else.
no,
You
no,
can't.
no. That's enough. That's quite enough. That's you've hooked me right there,
Oh, good.
because the things that scared me the most growing up, both my parents being German, uh, Baba Yaga being one, which is a little further east,
Mhm.
but it bled its way into Germany, and pure German was the book Struwwelpeter, which was translated into Shock-Headed Peter.
Ah,
And oh my God, the Gothic printing of those books, and a bizarre band, British group called the Tiger Lilies, doing a cafe Grand Guignol version of it. But oh, that's dark stuff.
I know.
That's
It's like my father's from, Cologne, so my father's German, and I just feel like all the Central and Eastern European, mythology is just, like, all terrifying. Just
yeah. Oh, that a lot of that's
right.
if you can find a copy of Struwwelpeter, it's like STREWW. If you just start a search on that, uh, I don't think there are too many other things that will match, even
Right.
just the illustrations. And it's similar to Teal Eulenspiegel with, nasty, nasty boy doing things like burning cats. And yeah, it gets, it gets pretty serious. And, and these are books written for children.
I know, how funny.
Yeah, how German.
Yeah,
My
life is unfair. Get used to it.
my father from Nuremberg, my mother born in Frankfurt but lived in Prague for for a good deal of time, but growing up in the 30s, so they did not fortunately stay in Europe very long.
Right.
And a movie could be made of the escape of each of them.
Wow.
That's another show, another 5 shows, another time. But yeah, I remember last time you and I discussed some similarities in our backgrounds.
Mhm.
And I wonder if that background, uh, the German Eastern European background, helps lend certain writers to writing speculative fiction, or what used to be called household tales, not fairy tales, but household tales, like the Grimms didn't write fairy tales, they wrote household tales.
Well, it's interesting you should say that because I was on a panel recently. We were talking about nature and science fiction, but
Mm.
the conversation went everywhere. And someone was like, "Well, human beings are basically good," and I was like, "What?" Like, we need to unpack that. So just like I think the kind of Eastern European fatalism was really
Yeah,
coming out to play. I was like, "No, no, we're totally doomed." Like I had no problem. And, it's very cheerful. It's like, well, eat, drink, and be merry because we're all, headed for the grave.
the archive, if we're lucky.
Yeah.
If we're lucky. Um, Now we're actually running out of time,
Oh, yeah.
but that's fine because we're not running out of time as far as putting this up on YouTube is concerned. But we are as far as last time you're on my radio show, it was 2 hours. Now I'm 1 hour,
Ah,
but now I'm prime time. So it was a sacrifice worth making.
right.
Uh, and I had a question, talked myself out of it. But how many? I'm just as I was saying, I was wondering if that background, which we share, of parents from that part of the world at a time when it was horrific, uh, how much that leads to you're writing a certain kind of fiction where pretty much everything you've written is dystopian. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, I think mm, people seem to think so. I don't know if I agree, but it could be because I do think I receive like negative sort of worlds very cheerfully, as
Mhm.
you might expect. So I'm like, is this really like I remember turning in Chosen once and being like, this is a lot lighter than my usual work. And my agent was like, excuse me? I think
Yeah,
the guy gets ripped apart over the Chicago River in this book. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that part.
yeah, there's
So
that
I think
minor thing.
I think my barometer is broken. So I have to like,
Yeah, well, I think that it's pretty fair to say that when you've gone to Sophocles, you've
yeah,
definitely hit, the far end of the needle on tragedy and,
yeah.
uh, well, darkness.
Yes, and Arch-Conspirator ended up being, like, accidentally timely in certain ways because it's
Oh,
sort of an oppressive, patriarchal dystopia specifically, so I it just yeah, it gets darker and darker, is all
is
I'm
it
saying.
it fair to guess that the background of the world when you started that, was it already the pandemic?
It was the pandemic,
Uh-huh.
um,
And it was also
yes,
a different White House.
it was a different White House.
A very, very, very different culture in the
Yeah,
country at the time, which we have still not fully climbed out of.
no.
And we can only pray that at some point we will climb out of that.
Yeah, that's the hope. Oh my gosh.
I-
You're giving me flash forwards to 2024.
Well, yeah, yeah,
Ugh,
I know. But I was hoping for something more uplifting, like, well, if things do get better, and they could, I think there's a chance of that.
yeah,
I won't say what the odds are, but if they could, would that change your writing?
no. I don't think so. I don't
You're happy with tragedy.
I guess I don't always have tragic endings. I just want to say for the record, not
Right.
for you, but for listeners.
Yes, please.
I do. I think I write to kind of find the hopefulness in the midst of bad situations. So when I'm writing, I don't think of the stories I'm telling as being difficult to read or experience, because what I'm interested in is the resilience that people exhibit in those situations. So to me, they always feel like a sort of like a helpful exercise. Like, you see, it can get very, very dark, but the spirit can endure, or people can band together um, and fall in love, or make friends, or find their family, or all of those things, even in the midst of darkness. So I don't think it would change so much. Like, I don't even know what a story would be like without that darkness, I guess, like of mine. I don't
Mhm.
write humor, like I don't know. I don't know what I would do.
There's pretty dark humor out there as well, but
That's
uh,
true.
that's again a different discussion. But yeah, it's just to me a fascinating thing that uh, yeah, everybody considers your work dystopic. It's the first word. It's it's in the first couple of sentences of
Usually, yeah.
yeah of people describing your work. And when you go to Sophocles, you're going to a pretty dark place.
Right.
Yeah,
This one, I certainly don't blame people. I mean, they're in the last city on Earth in this book.
yeah,
Everyone else is dead.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Whereas in a way, the originals were sort of like the only city
Yeah.
on Earth. Somebody could travel in, but they're not there in the place of where this play is set.
Mhm.
Are you done with the Greeks?
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, and again, the thing. Yes, you made that point. Your settings may be dystopic, but you also use the word resilience. This Antigone, she is strong.
Yes. She's strong and she's smart. Like, even in the original play, the way she defends herself, she's kind of called to for those who haven't read Antigone since high school and don't remember it that well, basically her brother defies her uncle, the king. He dies, and then she's forbidden to bury him properly, but she does it anyway. And she's caught and put to death. So that's the outline.
Right.
But after she's caught, she's asked to defend herself, and so she gets a lot of lines in the original play, and defends herself very capably, but without a lot of hope. She knew exactly what she was doing when she did it. And I feel like that comes across pretty clearly
Yeah.
in her character. But she's very, I mean, especially for the time that it was written, I think when we talk about retellings, we often talk about wanting to kind of course correct a little bit, like make them feminist, make them, modern feeling. And Antigone, I mean, it's certainly not feminist, because there's a lot of discussion of like what women can and can't do. But I guess it is. I feel like
I would.
she's this whole complex and nuanced character in 441 BC. Like,
Hmm.
she's so there was no updating necessary. Like, I just wrote her as
Yeah,
faithfully as I could.
her
Yeah.
character was full blown, and
Yeah.
the same thing can be said for Electra. And it's
Yeah.
interesting how they're not all Helen of Troys out there who don't even show up in these epics that
Yeah.
they are supposedly about them. But Helen of Troy is like, who is she?
I know. She's like a pawn. But
Yes,
yeah, I mean, all these plays we've discussed, like Electra, Antigone, Medea, like they all have they're the they're the title. Like, they own that play, each play that they're
yeah,
in. So,
and side characters from those plays as well. Circe
mhm.
is certainly a pretty strong character, but she also ends up, our family ends up tragic, but she ends up tragically. She goes off with the two timing hero, who then two times her. Not
Yeah,
smart,
great.
not smart.
Yeah.
but she's pretty strong. She thinks men are pigs. And for those who know about Cersei, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, what haven't we covered? This is the ultimate cheat when I'm not totally prepared with questions. And I'm sorry that I'm talking more than you are. What questions would you ask Veronica Roth? Oh,
Oh God, no! I'm so
I,
tired of hearing myself.
I really hope everybody's going to watch this on YouTube, because what a glare I got. Okay.
No, not a glare. Just
No,
oh
just a
God.
look of shock. A look of shock.
Oh gosh, I don't know. I mean, I just love talking about the work, so we've done that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm terrible at this kind of thing. Like, what
No,
questions do you
but
wish
I'll,
you were asked?
yeah, but that's also why I didn't come with the prepared interview questions. And
Mm,
believe me, you know, I can get them. Those, the publisher will send them to me
I
immediately.
know.
Now, I forgot who published Arch-Conspirator.
This is a Tor
Oh,
novella.
it is Tor again.
Hmm.
Okay. And Tor books, not Tor.com, not Tor.
Yeah,
It gets
Tor.
confusing.
It is confusing. I thought only Tor.com did the novellas, but that's not true. It's very, I don't know. But yeah, it's Tor books.
They were the first ones to do the novellas
Yeah, they're
and
good at it.
all that. Oh, and by the way, if anybody wants to buy the book, we have a little uh, Earl on for Amazon, which I will tell the radio listeners. It's well, you do the usual HTTP and slashes and stuff, and then it's amzn.to, the letter O, slash. Now they make it complicated, okay? 3LCK8W. And if you didn't catch that, either watch the YouTube video where it's actually on display, or write me, Jim at ourwolf.com. No, make it Jfreund, JFREUND at ourwolf.com. I've been having email issues.
Mm.
Uh, or,
Or my website. I have
yes,
links.
you do.
Yeah.
Which
On veronicarothbooks.com.
right. And I actually have that open on a tab, so I should have known. But it was engrossing. I enjoyed reading it. It has been so
Thank you.
long since I immersed myself in some of those Greek stories. Although I found a 30-part series that has since disappeared on Amazon of Greek tales, illustrated Greek tales, very well done. And,
Nice.
and going into all the little nooks and crannies of the characters' arcs. But
Yeah,
not,
and my soapbox about old Greek stuff is that if you read it in high school and you have negative associations as a result, you should try it again, because it's really like you can read Antigone in one sitting.
Mhm.
It's quick and it's great. It's really
It
good. Yeah.
is. It is. But well, I guess in fiction today, yeah, be prepared for darkness. And when people think of Veronica Roth, you think of those movies or those books, pop culture. Well,
I
think
mean, usually people think of
first.
the movies, let's be real.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, because that's what they do. But yeah,
Yeah.
well, I have unfortunate things to say about the way they handled the end of this epic.
Yeah, I
You,
know.
yeah, and the problem wasn't even bad artistic choices; it was bad business choices.
It got real weird at the end there. They were basically on Mars. I don't know what was going on.
Yeah,
We're talking,
yeah,
of course, about the third Divergent movie. It got weird.
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. I tried to read up on that. for the Chosen One interview, and uh, I was just going, "What?"
I know.
And I've only seen the first two films.
Well, that's probably best.
Yeah,
Just to be honest with you, like, I don't know. I'm
yeah,
not. I'm only laughing about it because for me, like, it didn't really affect my work. So the books were
right,
out by the time they made those movies. So for me, it's low stakes to laugh about it a little bit.
yeah. But well, hopefully we'll see more adaptations of your work. There have been a lot of
We'll see.
good recent adaptations.
It's
Uh,
true.
with the streaming era upon us, and they can do four episode arcs, one episode. Um, Sandman has done 10 plus a bonus,
Mm.
and they're about to do another 10.
But
So
yeah, it's nice that they can tailor it to what the work actually requires as opposed to having to fill 12 slots, 13. Then in the past, 24. Remember when seasons were like 24 episodes long? That's so
yeah,
crazy. Yeah,
20 was 24, 26, because
I don't
26 is
know.
half a year. But
Oh,
then and they did two 13 episode bits, took a week off, then they did the next, and then for the summer break, reruns.
oh my gosh. Yeah, I remember.
Very, very different. And that was television by appointment. When it was
Hmm.
on, you watched it then. Now, I don't know when things are on unless I'm waiting for a new episode of something to turn,
Yeah,
and I don't want to wait. Sometimes I'll wait for a story to finish,
I know.
which I did with his Dark Materials, uh,
Hmm.
based on the Philip Pullman books. And it was the second try at it because they screwed that up
Oh, yeah.
with
Oh,
the
the
Golden.
original Golden Compass. Yeah, not
I
so
love
much.
great casting, brilliant casting, a wonderful look to the thing. And then they made it, what, 2 hours and 15 minutes long when that movie wanted to be 3.5 hours.
Yeah,
And had they done that movie in that style in the 3.5 hours, I think it would have been a hit.
yeah.
But it
Well,
also came out opposite the last Harry Potter film,
oh, right. Oh,
which,
good luck to anybody doing anything at that time.
yeah, just shut down, run your release your movie a month later or
Yeah.
something like that. But when they redid his, then there was a script written. I don't know if this is before Golden Compass or the uh, later adaptation, but Tom Stoppard wrote uh, his version of the Golden Compass, which is the name of the first book of the His Dark Materials trilogy. And it would have come out at about 7.5 hours, which is about right.
Mm,
But
yeah.
then they did it. They I think when they did started calling it by the name of the trilogy, His Dark Materials, each 3 seasons, each one being a book, they were about 8 to 10 hours each.
Yeah. It's like it seems ideal for a book adaptation. It's
Yeah,
really what adapts naturally is like a short story into a movie
yeah,
of a regular length. So seems right to me.
or even a novella.
Yeah.
Um,
Hint, hint. Hollywood.
yeah, yeah, really. Uh,
Ah,
maybe who knows? Uh, would you rather see Divergent redone with the whole thing intact at the end, or would you rather see something else you've written adapted? Because you've done enough short stories and Arch-Conspirator. If people could take the darkness at the
I
end,
know. No, I would rather see something new. I feel like I've moved past Divergent. I still, I'm very think very fondly of that time, but I it's been over a decade. So for me, I'm like, come
yeah,
on.
You know
Let's
what?
move
It's on
forward.
HBO every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I look.
Oh, I know. The algorithms gives it to me all the time. They're like, "You might like this
Uh,
movie Divergent," and
yeah,
I
well,
just
yeah,
laugh.
that's exactly what happens to me. It's always there,
Oh,
and
well, that's nice.
but it is, to the extent that new readers, there are new
Yeah,
young adults.
it is great. I have no complaints, really. I just think it's funny that they're like, "You'll like this," and I'm like, "Yeah, yep, you're correct. I will like it. I did like it."
Mhm. Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
So final thoughts, final words before we get off the air.
Um, Arch-Conspirator,
Yeah, absolutely.
Antigone retelling. Read it.
Absolutely. And that's the other thing is this could be a very good uh let me see if I can nah. No. I'm playing around with the visuals here
There we go.
because yeah, no, that's fine. I just didn't like the fact that the Hour of the Wolf logo was going over your name.
Oh, and that's all right.
Yeah. Um but the book is Arch-Conspirator. Now, this is first publication, yes?
Yes.
Because I saw some things, reviews that came out in December.
Yeah, some of those early reviews.
Yeah, I thought they're supposed to wait for February 21st when the book is actually
I
released.
mean, that would be great, but some places aren't able to do that, so that's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but I was going to say Arch-Conspirator might also be a very good gateway for some people to then get into the Greek tragedies, that old stuff,
Yeah.
where there's a whole series of universes in the Greek stories.
Yeah, I'm kinda hoping that, I mean, sometimes people teach this in college or in high school, but most of the time it's in college, and I'm
Mhm.
kinda hoping somebody grabs this to pair it with the original. I just think that would be interesting. I would have
Yeah,
liked that as a student, so
yeah, that
we'll
would be
see.
very interesting. Well, maybe you could write a syllabus for a course.
Yeah, maybe I should. Just just in
Yeah,
case you need it.
yeah,
Mhm.
hey, let some professor do comparative study.
Yeah, could be fun. I always liked reading contemporary, kind of offbeat stuff in literature courses. That was always fun.
Yeah, well, this
Yeah.
would certainly qualify.
Ooh.
So, Arch-Conspirator from Tor Books, um, and the author Veronica Roth. Just spell it as you think it should be. It's not Roth in the old sense. There's no W in there. Although,
Nope.
given what happens to everybody, there's a lot of wrath.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me back.
Thanks, and let's do this again. And yeah, a little less chatty, although I love the chatting, and a little more getting into the depth. But it's so difficult with this particular book because it resonates for so many things in so many ways. And
Well,
it's interesting by writing a far future version of something from the far past, you've become contemporary.
I
It's
know. Very strange. Everything old is new again.
Yep, there you go.
Mhm.
So old-timey-wimey and all that good stuff.
Yes.
Thanks, Veronica.
Thanks
We
so
will
much.
Okay, we will talk again soon, I hope.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. Bye-bye, and don't hang up.
Bye. Okay.